I'm wondering about it because everything seems so bullish. Like there's almost like nothing really out there that like fights against Bitcoin right now, outside of maybe OG selling and all of that what might be happening, which like 100K is I think natural. What do you think is the uphold that is currently going on in the Bitcoin price, and how do you see it moving forward in the next couple of months and maybe year?
If we were to look at Bitcoin price today and look at the sentiment, which is today, like max bearish, everyone's like, oh, we're about to capitulate, and it could be that we do. I don't see a scenario where we drop back under the fair value gaps that were left earlier at around 85 and 92K. That's kind of like my base low, unless just something blows up systemically. Even then, I know that they're going to print in the short term, and they can do this in the short term, and that's just going to blow prices right back up. Um, but people can't forget that Bitcoin makes its moves. Um, there's only about 1 to 2 times per year where it makes a significant move, and beyond then, you get to a distribution and accumulation zones. And remember that a lot of people subscribe to the 4-year cycle theory, in which I believe we decoupled from that almost a year and a half ago because Bitcoin was already rising at a much faster pace than it had been in the prior 3 cycles, in kind of the year before the halving occurred, um, 2 years ago. And so now what you're seeing is a very structural change in the order flow. And right now we are in a distribution phase, but at the same time it's moving to larger institutional hands. You still have a lot of OGs and a lot of Bitcoiners like yourself and myself who are just going to hold ad infinitum, and not sell because we know what we have. And over time, that long-term holder base is going to continue to ingrain more and more people. Now, again, you've got kind of the structured bid up, and then when it makes a move, it's just a very, very volatile move to the upside or the downside. And we've already seen 1 to 2 moves happen this year. The fact that sentiment is max bearish and we're still at 100K, even when we go to 80, that's a very good signal to me. It means that um, the holders are still holding, and more capital has come into this system. When people look at markets too, remember that everything is narrative based. Right now it's AI and everyone's going to AI stocks. We even see it on a mini scale with Zcash right now. Everyone's going to Zcash and it's like, why do you go to that garbage? But then they'll they'll cycle back into Bitcoin when it makes its explosive move, and then you'll have a redistribution of capital, um, changing of hands. And so I think this is very, very bullish for long term, but it won't take away the fact that things are volatile still and will continue to be.
So it's basically just like this is the way to wait and to hodl, because you don't really know when this aggressive upwards movement will come, and it will come at some point, and you just know what Bitcoin is, and if you know what Bitcoin is and what you're holding, you're not gonna sell it anyways, and so you just hold it through. Like, I mean, it's almost ridiculous to think about that, because we have been up year to date. We have been up the last 12 months. We have been up like at every single metric that you can take take a look at, basically. But it's just like people want more and faster. So I don't know. It's just like a lot of impatience also, I see. But the second thing I wanted to ask you about was and I want to show you this chart. You probably have seen it around, but for the viewers, the gold price in the Weimar Republic, where is it? Here it is. When it was from like 1914 to 1923, and you kind of see the percentage change in the gold price on a monthly basis throughout the years. And it's just tremendously volatile, what gold price did. And I have a weird feeling that volatility and Bitcoin and coming to that thing might be similar to what we're entering. Is that something also that you're looking at?
Yeah, I agree because when you have scarce assets with that are supply side inelastic, it's extremely sensitive to the demand side of and liquidity essentially. Um, I do agree that Bitcoin's going to continue its volatile move, but to the upside over time, just simply because it's becoming an increasingly important asset. That idea of scarcity, in tandem with like the de-scarcity and the printing of fiat currencies. When you look at forward price, you are so right that people just need to be patient and not, get greedy and just lower your time preference, right? It's like the fact that just 4 years ago we were under like 30 or 40K, like you doubled if you held during that price, you doubled to tripled, or maybe even 4x if you bought it at like peak bottom, like 20 and into 22 at like 16K. Um, you've done very well. So just be patient. And for all the newcomers, it's the same thing as like there used to be days even 5, 10 years ago where if your stocks went up 1 to 2% in a day, you were thrilled. And like now Bitcoin might go up 8% in a day. And they're like, oh, they're not excited about that. But remember that like its moves are explosive. Now, you have to also think like an institution, right? So right now, a lot of retail they're feeling the squeeze of inflation. Most people do not have savings; they don't have capital to invest. They're just trying to stay afloat, and so that dynamic where things are tight, that constrains your liquidity inflows to assets like Bitcoin because they don't have anything to allocate. The people who did allocate already they already have capital. They're not, there is a steady stream from those folks stacking more and more, but not at aggressive levels. And so this is why institutions are driving price action. They're looking at the markets, they're looking at liquidity, and they're saying at what levels are we willing to allocate to? And we're approaching a range where this is becoming a very attractive price because we've sat over 100K for about 6 months now. And if they see it at that level at the bottom of the range or drop below, I guarantee you they're going to buy that up very quickly. Now, institutions are the ones with capital, and right now they're looking at the macro structure. And because the government has been, the US government's been shutting down, there's no flow of liquidity. Everything's propped up on deficit spending, remember? So they're shut down. A lot of this capital is not flowing through the economy. So it makes sense. I actually posted on October 17th on my Twitter saying, like, hey, everybody, watch out when the government shuts down. Liquidity is going to get tight and you'll see asset prices drop, especially in assets like Bitcoin that are sensitive to liquidity. That is going to change over the next 6 months. I can't scream that loud enough. The Fed is pivoting to QE, rates are coming down. Uh, Bank reserves are getting extremely liquid, and every time that happens, you get this massive expansion in M2, and assets like Bitcoin are going to blow out because hedge funds and institutions are going to quickly allocate. And so you get this temporary flux to the upside of liquidity and then new allocations. And then the same thing will happen probably towards the end of 26 and 27. I'm getting very bearish based on the metrics I'm looking at, and you'll see that liquidity contract again. And then we're going to deal with high inflation, and the Fed might actually have to hike, and then bank reserves will dry up, and et cetera. So you see these cycles of liquidity, and we're about to go into a highly expansionary cycle.
Interesting. Do you actually do you also think that the cycles in Bitcoin also continue to be like that? As always, every cycle they talk of like a different cycle this time, and there's always great arguments for it. But it actually seems for me that there's a lot of really good arguments why the cycles will be different this time around.
Yes, I do think again that we've decoupled from the traditional 4 year cycle in terms of just absolute 1,000% gains. One, because the market's much more capitalized now. That doesn't mean that we can't still do a 2 to 5x in any one year, especially if the U.S. announces like actual acquisitions of Bitcoin at the federal level. That's a white swan. It changes the game completely. Now, absent of that event, you still see the structural institutional bid as they're looking at price ranges and just looking at, you know, at what point do we allocate. Also, a lot of pensions and corporates are very bureaucratic, slow to move, but when they do move, it's a big move. And so even a couple percent allocation from a corporate or institution in their retirement plans or whatever they're allocating from. That when you combine that in aggregate, that's a big bid. And so you've got the structural bid, and the halving cycle on the supply side, it becomes less and less important. I think 2028 is the final cycle that will see a little bit of that dynamic come into play. But you have to remember that like almost 99% of supply has been issued. So you've hit very much critical mass in terms of um, supply being in the system. And so really it turns into the thesis of, is this going to be a store of value and is this a good asset? And the answer, obviously, we know is yes, it's the most scarce asset that exists out there.
It's almost, if anyone, because there's still beliefs outside of, like, we're still so early that this thing that we think so logical about is an outsider's opinion. Like it's almost like a very, it's almost like you have inside information on a company that's publicly available and you just wait for a thing to happen and you're like, oh, you make massively gains on that. And it almost seems like an insider trade of some sort, even though it's all public information, because like the whole Bitcoin purpose is that there is no insider trading. Like there's no insider because there's no like company or like institution that has any say over the network. So there by definition cannot be any insider information, insider trading. I mean, okay, maybe if a government official the day before Donald Trump announces that they're actually acquiring Bitcoin, hears it, then I mean, there's it's a different kind of insider trading, but there's not a Bitcoin specific one. But I guess there's still some kind of insider trading going on. I guess I don't know.
Well, really, it's the I love the meme like Bitcoin is the intelligence test, right? Is the majority of people when things are good, and things are starting to feel less good right now, but even 3 years ago, excluding the pandemic, or maybe let's go back 6 years ago, things were good, so people aren't concerned about their currency. And when they hear that, people, early Bitcoiners saying, "Oh yeah, like our current system's collapsing," they look at them and they say you're crazy. But now, they kind of look at us and they're starting to understand, but they still haven't felt the pain yet. And it's not until the majority of people feel the pain that then it's getting too late for them. So this is that asymmetry we're talking about. It's still very early for us in the game, but to us, 100K feels like a big amount. But remember, this this is only a 15-year-old asset, and so 15 years from now, we'll be well over a million in fiat terms, all things considering similar conditions. But when you talk to retail, or we all have those people that we talk to who aren't, own Bitcoin, who don't own Bitcoin or aren't in the system yet, and they're like, "Oh, I could have bought Bitcoin when it's $1,000 or $5,000," and like hindsight's 2020. They don't understand that Bitcoin where it's going, and they don't feel the pain yet, so they're going to get left out. And so the people who are prudent and who look around and say things look shaky, things look kind of scary, so I'm going to allocate towards this magical internet money called Bitcoin. Um, it sounds less far-fetched, but I think people are starting to get it. But the earlier you get in, the more asymmetry you have.
How do you explain someone, like, because I think we get it, but like do you explain someone how early in Bitcoin we are? Because so many people, especially people that are newer to this game, look at 100K and seem like, oh, we've come so far. But the same arguments were made when we hit the $1,000, the $10,000. Even they even like early posts when we hit $100, people are like, "Oh, I missed the train because Bitcoin is already at $100." Now they're biting their ass because it's 100 times higher than that.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I always go through the orange pill route. It's I'm that guy that everyone knows I'm the Bitcoin guy. So if they want to have a discussion about it, I always approach it from their angle. Try to put myself in their shoes and approach it from their angle. What are you looking at Bitcoin as? Is it a risk asset that you're just like, oh, I have extra capital and want to allocate to it, and maybe leave it there for a while and take a gain? Do you recognize that there's a structural issue in the system, and you want to protect your family, and in case something does happen, that's detrimental, you have an escape route. And so it really depends on how people are viewing it as an asset. And then I try to give them the bigger picture of, if it's a asset, give them the picture of this is actually the least risky asset from a structural standpoint in the financial system. If they already understand kind of the idea of it functions more like gold at the moment, well then, it's easier to explain the debasement trade and those concepts. And I would say I've been highly successful so far. I probably orange pilled over 100 people, so that's great. And it takes time for them to get comfortable with it. It's like, okay, just lower the time preference, right? I've given you the math. I've exemplified it through my own, um, you know, talking about it in my own portfolios. If you're just patient, it's going to bear a lot of fruit for you.
I think so too. And as you said, it's almost like an emotional intelligence test, where you have to get over, and we all had to get over that hump, that it wasn't the first time when we saw Bitcoin that we bought Bitcoin. It was probably the seventh time or the 20th time that we saw Bitcoin, like 2 years, 5 years, 3 years, 7 years later, which makes it hard because you saw Bitcoin, you could rally up, you might even got a negative opinion on that because you saw some headline and you got like triggered, or like, oh, it has more electricity than Austria, like whatever. And then 3 years later, 4 years later, you slowly get it. It's like, oh, okay, those Bitcoiners were talking actually the right thing. They were actually warning us about the right thing. But then you have to go over your pride, over your ego, and say like, oh, I was stupid 4 years ago, and now I have to pay a 10x higher price. That sucks. So,
Hmm.
so I get it from a lot of people, and it's hard. And I think we we keep winning as long as we stay humble.
Yeah, it's the ego tax. You're right. But still, we're so early in the game. And that's what the current discussion I'm having with a lot of people is like, oh, I could have bought it at 10,000 or 15. It's like, okay, well, if you think it's going to go back to then just wait. But I think, and based on my experience and my involvement in the markets, that this thing's going to go another 5 to 10x in 10 to 15 years. If you're willing to wait that out, then don't put it in. Don't look at the price, and I guarantee you're going to be very happy with that decision.
Yeah, I have a very hard time believing that we are gonna cross down to 20K ever again. I think it's almost like maybe we never hit the under 100K again, because I see a lot of resistance, a lot of buying power, a lot of a floor when it comes to 100K. Like it's almost like when it reaches down to 100K, it seems like there's a lot of people waiting to get those satoshis like under 100K at like 90K. I think also there's like some mechanic where a lot of people said like those uh, automatic dip buying machines that say like, hey, if Bitcoin drops under 100K, make sure to transfer some more money in there and to buy it up. So I maybe we never crossed significantly under 100K ever again. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we might, especially towards the end of 26, but I believe that there are a lot of institutions and a lot of funds and individuals who, if they see a 6, 7, or 8 in front of the number, and it's 5 digits, they are going to buy it heavily. And that's going to just form a new base of long-term holders who move that price up incrementally. And then again, you get those 1 to 2 moves per year where it's very explosive to the upside. And so you just wait and be patient. And then as the system continues to break down, people fly to it. And you're going to see that happen over and over again. Is you'll do a 20 to 50% move in any one year, and then you'll get a redistribution, and then goes back down, and then it accumulates again. And so you get these structured institutional moves where it just kind of moves up and up until you get a whole paradigm shift where uh, like people, the U.S. announces a buy, or BlackRock announces that this is the asset that they're going to invest in, and then it just blows out again. And but I think to kind of close the idea on the 4-year cycle, if if you look at the theory of technology, like truly innovative technology, there's three life cycles to it. There's the growth phase, which I think we're in right now, but actually closing the window on that, kind of ending this phase. Um, and this is where we're experiencing some diminishing returns in terms of comparisons to prior cycles. I think 2028 will kind of be the end of that phase. And then you go into adoption, where it becomes truly adopted and you get this exponential S curve. And then dominance is the last phase. And that probably won't happen until you and I will be very gray hair, I think, when that happens. Um, but there will be a period of time where it just continues to fly, and like the Samson Mao God candle idea, I think he's a little early on that thesis, but I do fully believe that once you kind of pivot into this adoption phase, it's just going to skyrocket, and there will just be years where it just continually climbs up.
I'm waiting for this moment of 100K upwards daily candle in Bitcoin. That's crazy. For me, it's crazy to see even like 5 or 10K. I think we had a 10K candle at one point. That's crazy because like just 6 years ago, the Bitcoin price was just $5,000,
I know.
$10,000. It's crazy to think about that. I have one question that I ask each and every one of my new guests on the podcast, and the question is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
I think a lot of Bitcoiners, they love the idea of Bitcoin being perfect money. I'm wholly in that camp, but don't forget the fact that financial markets are equally as important as money. And one thing that I've learned over the years is, they kind of dump on other ideas of blockchain, and I'm by no means a DeFi guy. I don't love like 99% out there, but you still need financial markets to have a global economic system. And so, like, yes, the impacted or the long-standing institutions that have developed these markets, uh, for better or worse, they have provided a lot of benefit to society. And so, I started out hyper maxi, Bitcoin's the most important thing, and kind of ignored the market side of things. But then as I started to trade and understand market dynamics, macroeconomics, you can't discount the fact that markets are so important. And so if you see quote unquote blockchain technology, I hate using that term, but other blockchains proliferating and developing, kind of adapting traditional markets so that they can allow Bitcoin to be more fluid in the system, that is a very good thing.
The first thing that every Bitcoiner does, and the most important activity that every Bitcoiner keeps on doing, is buying Bitcoin. And I personally use Relay to buy and sometimes also spend or sell my Bitcoin. And there are two main reasons why I do so. The first one is it's Bitcoin only. They do not do any shit coins. They do not do any cryptos, any stocks, or anything else. This is a tool, an app that is fully focused only and solely on Bitcoin. The second one is self-custody. They give you the keys to your Bitcoin the moment you buy them. You never give them the control over your Bitcoin, and you don't have to trust them because you can verify that you and only you have the keys to your Bitcoin. There's no third-party risk. There's no freezing of your assets. There's no rug pulling. There's nothing of that. Download Relay, the app, on your phone, or go to relay.app on your browser and use code Robin to save fees and get cheaper Bitcoin. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called micro seed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With micro seed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase. phrase, the entire seed phrase onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because MicroSeed is not selling the washer. MicroSeed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io.